Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Simplifying PCI with Authorize.net Accept Suite webinar. My name is Ray Anaya, and I'm the head of Technology Partnership Strategy here at Authorize.net, and I'll be your host this morning. A little bit about me. I've been with Authorize.net for 2.5 years, and before that with Visa for a total of 5. I've always had a keen love and interest of all things digital and payments, so it's kind of natural for me to find myself talking about PCI today. I definitely want to thank everybody, all of our attendees, whether you are a current Authorize.net customer or just a developer who has an interest in PCI. I really want to thank you for trusting Authorize.net to support your payment processing needs. Authorize.net is proud to support over 440,000 merchants, processing over 1 billion transactions per year. Today, we're actually very excited to talk to you about Authorize.net's Accept Suite, which was built for developers and technologists from the ground up. It helps to ensure an easy yet robust solution for PCI compliance. Now, as for today's format, I just wanted to quickly go over and give you a little bit of an overview as to what sort of topics we're going to be talking about, as well as just the general format. So we'll be presenting for about 20 minutes, going over the topics shown on your screen, and then we'll show a live demo of our developer portal as well as our sample application. And then finally, we'll open up for some Q&A at the very end of the webinar. So before we actually begin, there's a couple of things I'd like to do. So firstly, what you'll see on your screen is just a quick little poll to help me figure out and understand how familiar our audience is with PCI DSS. So if you are very familiar, mark down very familiar, somewhat familiar, slightly familiar, or not at all familiar. And hopefully that will change by the end of the webinar. While you go ahead and submit your responses, I will just cover off on also a little bit of housekeeping in case there's any questions. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets that you can use. All the widgets are resizable, movable, extendable, so feel free to move them around, get the most out of your desktop space, make sure that your experience is as great as it can be. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. Just a couple of things about asking questions or why you're not hearing yourself if you happen to be talking. Everybody's in listen-only mode right now, with the exception of the presenters. If you do have any questions, you can submit them through the chat window on your screen. We have a couple of team members standing by to try and answer as many questions as possible. If we start seeing a significant trend of questions, we'll go ahead and save those for the end during our Q&A session. If you happen to have any technical issues or any questions or concerns about your actual webinar experience, we also have a help widget at the bottom of the screen. And if you have any major issues, please go ahead and submit it just like you normally would a regular question. And at the very end, we will go ahead and be sending out a recorded version of the webinar, as well as a short survey just to help us understand how helpful the webinar's content was. And lastly, my favorite part of any sort of webinar is the confidentiality notice. So I do want to make sure and remind everybody of our confidentiality notice. Please be aware that some of the information we discussed today may be considered confidential and forward-looking. Now, with all that legalese out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So let's see how our poll results are. Okay, so everybody falls within pretty much somewhat familiar to slightly familiar. So that's good. We'll be able to tailor the conversations and the demo a little bit to make sure that everybody gets the most out of this. So thank you for submitting your results here. So let me start off with what is PCI Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS. So The security standard actually has two core tenets or policies, if you will. The first is we want to strengthen credit, debit, and cash card transaction security. What that means is we want to make sure that whenever a card transaction is transmitted, be it online, be it via terminal, that it is secured as much as possible. The second piece to that is protecting cardholders against fraud and theft of personal information. So this has to do with the storage of that data once it is collected and before or after it's actually transferred. So who created this standard? There is a security council called the PCI Security Standards Council, which is composed of the major credit card networks as well as a few ancillary members. And basically, we created a set of 6 major requirements to be considered PCI compliant. I'm not going to go through each one of these. However, I do want to call out on your screen that requirements 1, 5, and 6 all have to do with the transmission of cardholder information. So again, going back to that first tenet, making sure that anytime you transmit, you have a policy, you have the appropriate measures in place to protect the transmission of that data. Secondly, bullet points 2, 3, and 4 all have to do with the storage of that cardholder information. So once again, tying it back to those 2 core principles. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, this is great, but how do I ensure that I'm PCI compliant? Is there a process? Is there some sort of tool? So there are actually 2 ways to attest to being PCI compliant. One is by performing a report on compliance, which requires weeks and months of time and effort, in addition to hiring an outside auditor. The other is by completing what is called a SAQ, or Self-Assessment Questionnaire. So today we're actually going to be touching upon how Authorize.net helps solve for the SAQ portion, the SAQ portion, for SAQ-A and SAQ-A-EP. And we'll be getting into that in a little bit once our second presenter goes through the demo. So I want to quickly touch on some stats as to why is PCI compliance so important? What's the real big deal here? So as you can see on your screen, there's a couple of scary looking stats. 60% of small businesses experience some sort of cyber breach as of FY16. And 70% of the attacks that happen targeted businesses with less than 100 employees. So what this should help convey to you as a developer, as a small business owner, as somebody who works with developers or small business owners, is that the less resources you have, the hackers out there, the attackers, they know that, and they know that you don't have the requisite savviness or technology protocols in place to make sure that you're secure. So with that said, I think the purpose of this webinar is to highlight that what we really want to make sure is that businesses understand the need for PCI savvy developers like yourselves, or hopefully like yourselves after the end of this webinar. The reason is because creating and submitting a form is super easy. Anybody can do that. But forms with payment data have to be PCI compliant. And the reason for that is because if the forms are not PCI compliant, it puts the small businesses at risk, and that can include substantial fines, penalties, and legal action. And that can actually even trickle down or be holding accountable the developers of the plugins or the technology that power those small businesses. So it's safe to say that developers play a very important role in building a solution that meets business requirements and reduces PCI complexity. And that is what we want to talk to you about today. How can Authorize.net and the Accept Suite help you do that? So to talk to that point, I'd like to introduce our second presenter now, Anurag Gupta, a former developer and our Director of Product Management for Authorize.net's Developer Services. Anurag, take it away.
Hey guys, thanks Ray. Thanks all for joining today. I'm Anurag Gupta, Product Manager for Developer Platform and APIs for Authorize.net. I have been working for last 3 years now in Visa at our Bellevue location, Washington. So let's get started on how to simplify the PCI compliance for your payment solutions using Accept Suite. Authorize.net Accept is a set of developer tools for building websites and mobile applications without increasing PCI burden for merchants. It offers a range of integration options, including JavaScript libraries, mobile SDKs, and hosted forms. Accept Suite comprises of 5 products as shown on the slide. We have Accept Hosted, which is a fully hosted mobile optimized PCI SAC-A compliant payment form for payments. Then we have Accept Mobile SDKs, which allow mobile developers to provide credit card payment functionality in their mobile application while maintaining SAQ-A compliance. We have Accept Customer, which is again a fully hosted mobile optimized solution for leveraging our customer profile methods while maintaining the SAC-A compliance. And then we have AcceptJS, which is a JavaScript solution for one-time tokenization of card and bank details. It allows the merchant to host its own payment form for a PCI SAC-A EP solution. Last not least, we have Accept UI. It's a built-in mobile optimized payment form for AcceptJS hosted by Authorize.net for a PCI SAC-A solution. Each of these products is PCI SAC-A compliant with the exception of AcceptJS, which is PCI SAC-A EP compliant. We'll go into more details into each of these products in the upcoming slides now. Now let's look into some of the common use cases in our payment solution where these products will be useful for simplifying PCI compliance. I think the first use case is where you want to start taking in one-time payments on your website and you just want to make sure that your system is not touching any credit card details and you're hosting it using your own custom form, but you're tokenizing and making sure you're PCI compliant. And in this case, you can use our AcceptJS or Accept UI product. The second use case is where you want to just put in a buy button or a donate button on your website or storefront. This is pretty much where you want to use our own hosted form so that the hosted form is hosted by Authorize.net. You don't have to take the burden of building the payment forms. It's a pretty quick development process. And here you can use our hosted payment or Accept UI. The third use case is where you want to leverage our card on file functionality in our platform, where you have returning customers who want to save their credit card details, so that when the next time they come in for purchase, they're able to use their stored credentials instead of typing in the credit cards again. Here again, I think you can use hosted payments, you can use Accept UI. Fourth use case is hosted tokens, where you want to use token or tokenization for card or bank account details and then either host the payment forms on your own or use our own. The fifth is the mobile in-app applications, where you are building mobile applications for iOS, Android, and want to leverage and provide the payment functionality, leveraging our SDKs, and making sure your applications are PCI compliant.
And while we won't be going into the mobile SDK, right, Anurag, it's pretty safe to say that we have a robust set of solutions for all this, right?
Yeah, that's correct, Ray. So let's dive into our first product of Accept Suite, which is AcceptJS. AcceptJS is a JavaScript-based solution for sending secure payment data directly to Authorize.net. It's pretty much summarized. It's a pretty simple JavaScript which you can use to have the full control of your payment form. It's not a hosted form, so it's pretty much server-side JavaScript. So you host your own payment form. The JavaScript actually extracts the card details before once it sends from the customer browser directly to Authorize.net, and it returns a one-time payment token. The browser posts the payment token to your server along with any other information, and your server can then send a transaction request to Authorize.net using that one-time payment token instead of account number and other payment information. So pretty much your server will never have any knowledge of any PAN details or bank account details. All you will get is a tokenized a one-time token which you can then use for doing a payment or creating a card or profile on our platform or creating a recurring subscription out of it. So let's understand like how it actually, what are the steps for integrating it. It's pretty simple. There are 3 simple steps for integrating. The first step is you have to load the JavaScript in your page. This is pretty much how you do it. The next step is mainly you have to call a method on accept JavaScript called dispatch data. It accepts 2 objects, secure data and response handler. The secure data comprises of 2 objects. First is auth data. Auth data comprises of your client ID and API login key. These details you can actually create by logging into merchant account and creating it the one time from there. The card data actually contains the credit card information, and once the dispatch data is called, it actually passes the both information of the authentication and payment data along with the JavaScript method that you have to create to handle the AcceptJS response. The third step is handling the response. So here you must create a JavaScript function to handle the response from Authorize.net accept JavaScript. This function will receive an object containing the request status as well as the payment token. Messages block of the response identifies the result of your request for tokenization through AcceptJS. The result code element will have a status of either OK or error, while the message code and text will provide more meaningful details in the case of. So that's the pretty much 3 basic steps what you have to do to use our AcceptJS and do the tokenization. Now, once you have finished the step 3, you can see the last step is you are getting the response.opaque data. So this is the one-time token which you receive back from AcceptJS, and then you can leverage our APIs to either do the one-time payment or store this one-time token as a card on file on our system and then use it as a profile, or use this one-time token to create a recurring billing or subscription out of it. Now let's move on to the second product, Accept UI. Accept UI combines the flexibility of our AcceptJS solution with the PCI Compliance profile of our Accept hosted product. It's a built-in mobile optimized payment form over AcceptJS hosted by Authorize.net, and it provides a SAC-A compliance level. You can embed an AcceptJS hosted form in your application to capture and send sensitive payment information directly to Authorize.net without touching any of the sensitive card details on your server side. Now let's look into the steps for integration. Again, it's pretty much the same steps which we did for AcceptJS. So Accept UI is just a wrapper or a UI wrapper over AcceptJS, so that as a developer you don't have to take up the extra effort of building the payment form. The end result is still the same, that in the end you will still get a one-time token from this, which you can then use to either create a payment or add it as a profile or use it to create a recurring billing out of it. So the first step is mainly you load the Accept UI.js in your application. The second step is you add the button element. This is pretty much how you can add the button element on your website, and you have to pass the API login and the client key, similarly what you did for AcceptJS. And then we have some text buttons where you can customize the text, what you want to show on the button. And in the end, you provide the response handler message or the callback message, which we'll talk in the next step. The third step is mainly add the callback function. And pretty much here again, you just check the result code, whether it's error. If it's not error, then you just use the response.opaque data, which is the one-time token you get to do the transaction or a card on file operation after that. So that's pretty much the 3 steps to do for integrating Accept UI. And in both cases, the end result is pretty much you are making sure you get this one-time token from the card detail or bank account details, which you can then use to do a follow-on transaction from your website or creating card on file payments. The next product we'll talk about is Accept Hosted. So Accept Hosted is a mobile optimized payment form fully hosted by Authorize.net that enables developers to use Authorize.net APIs to submit payment transactions. And it maintains SAC-A PCI level compliance. Developers can redirect customers to Authorize.net payment form or embed the Authorize.net payment form directly in their own page. These forms are mobile optimized and designed to reduce friction in your customer experience. So as you see that this is a fully hosted solution. So the value here for the developers is pretty much you don't have to build in the form here. The form is hosted by Authorize.net. Pretty much you can embed this hosted form or you can redirect to this hosted form. And there is no maintenance of having to create a hosted form or adding validation to this. Also, what we do is we support card on file on this hosted form, wherein if you have a returning customer or you have a customer ID which you can pass it to this form, then you will see the last 4 payment forms, payment methods which were saved for this customer, and he can actually use them, or he can add a new card detail, and then in the end there's an option to save the credit card in the last option so that it's saved, and then next time when he comes in he can just use that saved payment option instead of adding a new credit card here. We have a couple of customization options in this form. There are like pretty much 10 options which you can use to customize the look and feel if you want to show the end receipt, or do you want to show only the credit card payment options, or you want to show both credit card and bank accounts. So it's pretty customizable in a way that it depends on your use cases. You can adopt the hosted payment settings and make it more adaptable to your use cases. Also, we allow 3 methods of integrations where you can redirect to the hosted form, or you can use it as a pop-up, or you can use as an embedded iframe. So we have seen developers using it in different various fashions, and it's pretty popular where you want to just create quickly a payment form and not get into the nuances of the validations and all the details you have to do to create these payment forms for your website. Okay, so the next one we'll go into is called Accept Customer. Accept Customer is a fully hosted, mobile optimized solution for payment information capture, which allows developers to leverage our customer profile methods and maintain SAC-A level PCI compliance. So this is pretty much used for where you want to save a card detail from the customer, or you want to show the various details, the card details or the addresses which they have saved, and then use those customer profiles to do a payment after that. Pretty much it works pretty much similar to how the Accept Hosted works in, wherein you first call an API call, which is get hosted profile page request to retrieve a token, and in the request which we have shown on the slide, you can customize the various settings which you want to show for the hosted form. The second step is mainly you get this one-time token which you use to do a post in a payment form. So the token is passed in a basic HTML form with the input name token. The input name token is the only input value which must be included for the request to add the payment or the shipping profile, or to manage all of your profiles in one window. And then the third step is mainly displaying the form. The hosted form is designed so that you have the freedom to integrate it into a site in almost any way. You can configure it as a separate pop-up window or embed into your existing site. You can also use a lightbox layout in which the box pops up in front of your rest of your site, but not in the new window. And finally, you can just use the full window by directing the customer to Authorize.net and letting them direct themselves back, which avoids the use of JavaScript.
So, Anurag, it seems like we pretty much have a solution for every single scenario that might come up as an application developer, right? No matter what your PCI concern is or what sort of environment you're working on, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's why we offer these different products with different level of PCI compliance and different flexibility. So you can go from a very basic AcceptJS, which is a plain vanilla JavaScript for doing tokenization, where the developer have the full control on the hosted form and they can create their own experience. And on the other side, we have this fully hosted payment forms called Accept Hosted and Accept Customer, wherein we have the whole hosted form, which is hosted by Authorize.net, and all the work is offloaded from the developer side over to the hosted form from Authorize.net, and it just reduces the development time for a developer to quickly integrate and allow these pay buttons or donate buttons on their website without getting into the nitty-gritties of the payment form. So I think let's dive into now into the demo quickly. So before we start the demo, I just have to start doing the screen share. So give me a second. I will start the screen share, and then we'll start the demo. Okay. So I was told I have to wait for a couple of minutes to buffer it. I think Ray is giving me a thumbs up, so it looks like you guys can see my screen now. And let me quickly open my browser. So what we'll do is actually we'll have a quick tour of our developer center and what are the dev resources for this Accept Suite, where you can get more help and details on how to use these various products. And then we'll jump into the sample application which we host on our GitHub for Accept to showcase all these products, how they work and what are the different use cases, and how you can leverage our sample application for understanding more on each of these products and try to get the use case to build up your own application out of it.
And just before we start that, Anurag, it's important to note, right, that all of these links we'll be providing at the end of the webinar, so that if anybody has any questions or wants to just go and check out these links directly, this is all available. This is all open to every developer who wants to take a look.
Yeah. So our developer portal is at developer.authorize.net. So you can actually come up and sign up for a free sandbox, which is pretty simple. It takes a couple of minutes. Once you sign up for the sandbox, you will get a transaction key and a login ID, which you can then use for calling our APIs or using our Accept products for sandbox. So pretty much like starting up on the sandbox is pretty quick. It takes a couple of minutes. You can actually visit the API reference from here, which is the most popular visited one. This is a page where we showcase all our APIs across all our products, which is payments, mobile in-app transaction, fraud management, recurring billing, customer profiles. And then the cool feature here is that you can actually click on the try tab here and just do a payment without even doing a sandbox sign up. So we do provide default credentials here. So if you see here, I quickly clicked on the send and I was able to do a quick transaction of a payment on my sandbox without even signing up. The next thing which is pretty cool here is that you can actually change this request and test out different requests within from this try tab. And this is pretty helpful for the developers who are trying in our APIs for the first time. There is a link for the sample code, which is linked to all the sample code and the SDKs we have on GitHub in all the 6 languages. And also we have tabs for going over the request response to understand more on the various elements we support on each of the API calls. Now let's look into the Accept Suite feature, where you will find the Accept Suite feature in. So for going to the Accept Suite feature page, you have to click on the APIs, click on the API documentation, and here you will see the set of feature link for all of the features we provide on our developer platform. You have payment transaction, customer profile, you have Accept Suite here. And once I click on the Accept Suite documentation, this is the landing page, which is we have all the details of different products. There's a nice feature matrix which tells what PCI compliance each of these products gives you, whether you have to host the payment form or we provide the hosted form for that, and then what are the payment methods supported for each of them here. And also it has a link for our SAC eligibility overview and our PCI compliance, which was done by a third-party Coalfire. It's a pretty popular link which I would recommend for you guys to quickly go over and read more. And this gives more details on how we achieve the PCI compliance for different products and what it does. It's pretty nice to read and understand how each of these product works, and it will give you more details on pretty much how internally this product works. And then we have like different links for each of these products which we went into just now. So you can click on the AcceptJS link to understand more about AcceptJS. So AcceptJS, again, like we had a very quick tour on how to use it in the 3 steps. This is a much detailed documentation where you will get actually the nitty-gritties of what you have to do. We also provide sample code in the end, which you can use to just copy paste from here and use it We have the link to the sample application here, so you can click on the link for the sample application on GitHub, download this application. This is a sample application for the whole Accept Suite. We showcase all the products in this. It's built on PHP, so pretty much most popular language for our developers for doing web development. And if you go to the README file, you can understand easily how to host the sample app in a web server supporting PHP. Pretty much all you have to do is you have to set environment for this API login and the transaction key, which you'll get once you sign up for the sandbox, and then I think you're good to go. We provide all the example for Accept Customer, AcceptJS, Accept Hosted, Apple Pay on the web, and Visa Checkout here, which you can use to understand how to use this in your sample applications. Now let me quickly go and tell you one more feature, which is on the API reference. So if you remember, for using accept token, we told you that once you get the accept token from Java, from AcceptJS, you have to do a payment transaction. So you can find the detail of that request here, which is create and accept payment transactions. And if I click on the try tab, I can see a sample request, which will pretty much tells you how you can create that payment request and pass that opaque data, which is the one-time token you would receive either from AcceptJS or Accept UI. So just to let everybody know, this is sometimes a confusion for the developers who are starting out. AcceptJS and Accept UI don't do a payment. They actually just create this one-time token from your card details or bank account, and then the developer has to call an API like this one, create transaction, to do a payment or use that token to create a customer profile or create a recurring payment. Whereas on Accept Hosted, because it's a fully hosted application, once I click on the payment, it actually does the payment without you guys even doing any integration to a payment API. It internally just creates a token and does the payment from that card details which you entered. I'll go in more details once I show the demo, but this was one of the top confusion which developers have, and they've asked this question a lot of time in the past on the forums. So pretty much this is what you have to pass here. There's a data descriptor which is called common.accept.inapp.payment, and then the data value is the one-time token you receive. So if I do a payment right now, I hope the payment will not go, and it should give me so it basically should give me an invalid token. I think I'm not putting some other details here. That's fine. So that's pretty much for the AcceptJS and Accept UI, the API call you have to do. Now coming to the Accept Hosted, let me show you where you'll find the detail of the Accept Hosted to get the first step, which is the API call which you have to do to get the hosted payment token. And if you see this request will look like pretty similar to the transaction request, which is true because in the end it does a transaction, but along with that it has a lot of settings which we have talked about before, which is the hosted payment settings. So you can actually set the return option, whether you want to show receipt or what is the URL you want to return it. You can show the text which will be shown on the button for the pay option. You can figure out the styling, what you want to show, and then whether you want to use capture and show for the security settings. So pretty much it has a lot of settings which you can go, and you can go to the feature detail page and understand more about these settings. But once I click on the send here, what it will do is it will just create this one-time token again. Now this token is different from AcceptJS and Accept UI token because this is a hosted form token. The value of this token is you can use this token and then post it on to the URL of the Accept Hosted, and it will then show the payment form. And again, we'll go into more details later on in the demo. The last but not least is the Accept Customer. This is the API call which you have to do for calling the hosted profile page, which is Accept Customer. Pretty much it works similarly to how the Accept Hosted works in. There are a couple of settings fields which you can pull in. The other thing which you have to pass is a customer profile ID. This is the customer profile for which you will show or you will create the payment profiles for. Okay, so let's quickly go over the sample app now. So this is a sample app. We host it on GitHub, so it's pretty easy to download. You can open issues or you can ask questions on this forum. We have a very good team of developers who are always helping out on this GitHub forum. Now let me show you a hosted application, which is the sample application which we host right now. Let me just refresh it. So this is how the application will look, the sample application will look like once you host and run your application. And what we have tried to do is we have tried to replicate a store which is selling spices. Just a way to tell more like how you can do payments for spices. I don't know who will buy it, but that's what we did. Okay, so let me show you the first example or the demo for AcceptJS. And so you click on the pay button, and this is the pay button which we created for AcceptJS. Now before I show it, let me just open the console button so I can show you what goes in underneath here.
And while you're doing that, Anurag, I mean, this really shows how quick and easy it really is to stand up a payment flow, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So pretty much it's the 3-step, and we are trying to follow and make sure we simplify the integration more as we get the feedback to make sure that we are enabling the developers to focus more on the business value of the application rather than worrying about the payment flow and how they accept payments. So leave the payment problems to us and focus more on the business value or the business flows of your application. So let's look into the payment accept example here. So pretty much what we did was we loaded the AcceptJS here. Now when I click the button here, it will open this hosted form. Now this hosted form is something which as a developer you will have to host, because AcceptJS is a server side or a headless JavaScript which will just do the tokenization. So this form is hosted by the developer, wherein I can add the card details, I can put in the card information, the value of the amount what I do, and what we do in this sample application is once I click on submit, it will create the one-time token, and then internally the sample application will do the payment. So in the console you will see logs for these two. So let's see. Okay, perfect. So if you see, there are two log messages. The first is this is the one-time token which got created. So pretty much the hosted form called the JavaScript, tokenized it, gave it back, and then we use this one-time token to do a payment for $100, and this is the result which came out of it. You can see the payment actually went out successfully here. Now let's look into the second example for Accept UI. Now, just to give a small note that AcceptJS actually right now supports both card and bank details, whereas Accept UI only supports card for now. We are going to add the support for bank account pretty soon in coming months. We have a release coming up for that, so don't worry about that. It's already in the pipeline. So this one actually makes life much easier for the developer, where in the AcceptJS you have to host your own form and build that form. Herein, like, you just have to put the button and the JavaScript, and once I click on this button, let me just clean the console. So once I click on this pay button, what I'll do, it will pop up a hosted form. Now this hosted form is hosted by Authorize.net. So as a developer, you don't have to worry about how this hosted form is built up. We take care of how this whole will build up and how this form will look like and what are the validations here. And let me just add a proper card number. And you can see if I put a wrong card number, it gives me an error. So the pay button will be disabled. So only if I put a proper card number and put all the fields which are mandatory, only after that I will be able to do a payment now. So again, when I click on this pay, it pretty much does the same thing on the background, where it will create this one-time accept token, and then as a developer you have to take that one-time token and then you can use it for doing the payment or creating a card profile or doing it for a recurring payment. So let me show that quickly the demo. Okay, perfect. So if you see here again, we got back the token which was the one-time token, accept in-app payment, and then we call the create transaction to do the payment using that token. There's one more thing which is very important about this token is that this token can be only used with your merchant credentials. So there's no worry if this token is read by a third party or somebody reads it. Nobody else can use it because it's a 15 minutes one-time token, and this can be only used with your own merchant credentials. So even somebody else get hold of it, it's totally useless for them because they cannot use it for a payment or doing anything with our Authorize.net APIs. We actually validate on our server side whether it's coming from the correct merchant credentials which was used to create this token or not. Okay, perfect. So now let's go over the accept hosted example. So accept hosted is, let me quickly refresh the page. So once I click on the pay button, this is the one of the example which we have shown for accept hosted. Now if you see, we are only showing card details here because when we call the setting, we disable the bank account. So it's pretty customizable in a way, whether you don't want to accept payments with bank account, you can disable it. Also in near future, we are planning of adding more support for digital payments. So we'll see support for Apple Pay, Visa Checkout, and PayPal also on this hosted form pretty soon. And pretty much the way it works is pretty simple. So the user comes in, they click on the pay button, and you create that one-time token, the hosted form token, and then you display this form to them. And once the customer adds a valid card details here, then he can click on the payment and quickly finish the payment. Now the good thing here is that once I click on the payment here, let me just open the console. Yeah, so the good thing about the hosted payment is because this whole form is hosted by Authorize.net, so none of the card details will ever touch your server, even in the form. So everything which happens with this sensitive information for PAN details or bank account is mainly taken on the server side on the Authorize.net. Now once the customer will come and pay, click, it does the processing on the backend, and voila, the payment is done now. And all you get back is the response along with the last four of the card, the transaction ID, and the response code. So this actually simplifies the work for the developer more, where you don't even have to care how the payment is done. You just host this form and the payment will be done on behalf of you using this. And then it's pretty customizable so that it's much easy for you to customize it to your look and feel. We're adding more features in coming releases which will make it much more easy for you to do more styling and make it more customizable to your website or your storefront. And let's quickly go over on our last demo for Accept Customer. So if you see, there are three tabs here, which is for profile, payment methods, and shipping. So let me give a quick refresher of what is Accept Customer, or what is our customer profile does. It gives you the ability to save cards or bank accounts on our server side, and we provide back you a customer ID or a payment ID which you can use it for doing payments or creating recurring billing out of it, or just doing reporting based on that. So the sensitive card details are never stored on your server. You can use this Accept Customer to store the card details on our servers and be totally PCI compliant using that. So this is the first page where if you see, I already have some card numbers already stored in, and also the shipping profiles. Let me try to add a new payment method. And again, this whole form is hosted by Authorize.net. Let me add in my card details. And also what you saw here, that this billing address was already pre-populated. And the way it was pre-populated is when you call the first step for creating a token, you can actually pass the billing information which you have got as part of your checkout flow, so that the merchant or the customer doesn't have to enter it again on this form, and he can just enter the card details and click save. So it's pretty nifty feature, but it's pretty useful in making sure that the customer gets a good user experience. So when I click on the save, it will save the card. Oops, looks like the card detail is already there. Let me change the name. Yeah. So that's the card which got saved now. And similarly, actually, I can click on this arrow button and then I can do an edit, where in the edit I can change the expiration date, or I can change the billing information and then update the save payment options. Now what happens is, like, once these cards are saved, you can actually retrieve this using our APIs and then use the profile ID for doing payments, and I'll quickly show you how to do payments with that. So this is the API reference which we went through quickly before. Here you will see a section for customer profiles. So if you see, this is one of the APIs for create customer profile, and pretty much the accept customer is the UI over these APIs which we have. And one of the APIs will be for doing payments using customer profile. This is the one. So quickly, let me show you. So in this create transaction, instead of passing card details, you can pass the profile information of customer profile ID and payment profile ID and do a payment using this. So once you use the accept customer, you will have these profile IDs with you, and then you use these tokenized profile IDs instead of actually handling any sensitive information on your server side. Let me try to see. Yep. The last flow is mainly you can delete also. So I can actually click on one of the payment options and click delete, and it will just delete the payment method. So you can add, delete, update, and retrieve the list of the payment information from accept customer. So the last tip is mainly to go through the README file on this sample application. This is an important piece where you can start creating your application and understanding more. It has very nice details on each of these different integration for products we have. Also, another thing which I want to point out, which is pretty helpful to the developers, is we have a very rich developer community. So if you come to the developer.authorize.net and go to support, you will see a link for forums. You can come to the forums, and here you can actually start posting issues, and you will see a lot of our internal developer teams who are helping out on these issues, and me and a lot of our developers usually triage this issue daily. So if you have issues, you can reach out us on the forums. We are here to happy to help you out. Also, I'm also looking for a lot of feedback from developers. So if you have any developer feedback, any complaints, any ideas or issues with the developer platform APIs, please feel free to drop me a mail on the forums, or you can directly email me at developer_feedback@authorize.net. From the roadmap side, all we can say that we have a very rich roadmap for Accept in the coming year. We are working towards this 2.0 platform for Accept, which is unifying our platform for these different products. Along with that, we are introducing new digital payments so that you can start taking payments using Accept hosted, using Apple Pay or PayPal, and also will provide a more simplified version of a pay button. So look out for more details. Also, the way to get more updates on our developer forum is you can subscribe to our developer blog. So again, if you go to support, there's a link for developer blog, and you will see here I mostly sometimes blog about the things which are happening or the updates. And then you can actually click on the blog option and you can subscribe here somewhere, I think. Yep. So I already subscribed. So if you subscribe, you'll get these updates on the blog post. So that will keep you guys posted on the new updates which are coming in here. The last tip which I want to give you if you want to start using Accept is, and this is again based on the feedback we get on the forums, is there's another feature which we have on our platform called webhooks. And I'll not go into details, but these are automated notifications on different events which you get in. So what we have seen is a lot of developers use Accept and webhook together, because you can do the payment checkout on the UI, and then you get a real-time notification back using these webhooks. So that's a cool tip if you want to leverage Accept and webhooks. That pretty much creates a good mashup for you for the solutioning. I think Ray is giving me an evil eye. So I think I'll take our due now. Thanks all for listening to me, and yeah, send me feedbacks and issues or any tips for that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anurag. So now we have about 10 minutes left, and I'll be opening it up to a couple of questions that we've received. If you haven't gotten your question answered, please bear with us. We are continuing to answer the questions as quickly as we can. But a couple of questions have come up that I definitely want to address. So the first question that we received is, are the corresponding self-evaluations, or the SAQs, the self-assessment questionnaires, between SAQ level A and SAQ level AEP relatively similar, or are they noticeably more work? So in order to answer that question, I'm actually going to answer another question we received, which is, what is the difference between the two levels? So SAQ-A is for card not present merchants who have all of the payment processing functionality fully outsourced. What that means is that they do not have any cardholder information that is stored in their application, nor do they actually handle the transmission of that cardholder information from point A to point B. So basically, this is where you fully outsource your payment flow, and you do not direct somebody to a payment flow to a third party. SAQ-A-EP is actually a very new PCI compliance level, which actually has to do with e-commerce merchants. So the difference between the two is that SAQ-EP allows you to direct merchants to an iframe or a URL redirect that does go to a PCI compliant third-party payment processor. So the real difference is with SAQ-A, you are not touching payments at all in any way, shape, or form, whereas with SAQ-A-EP, you are perhaps collecting information, or you are collecting the actual order amount, and then you're sending that along to a payment processor. So in order to answer the original question, which is, are the self-assessment questionnaires markedly different? Well, with SAQ-A, you are answering 14 questions, which range from, what is your website, how are you not touching cardholder data, to SAQ-A-EP, which is a whopping 139 questions. That is not to say that those questions are particularly difficult to answer. It is simply that there are more questions, as you are somewhat touching payment information, but that you are still outsourcing it to another party.
And also, just to add to that, like if you go to our developer portal under Accept, there is a white paper which I have published for this, so you can use that for understanding more in this in detail, and that gives a very good understanding of how these different compliance work, and then how Accept products leverages them to provide you this PCI compliance.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Anurag. Moving on to our next question, it seems like we've seen this question a little bit. So Anurag, maybe you can walk us through this particular question. So there seems to be a lot of functional crossover between the different products. Can you perhaps spend a couple of seconds here just going over, like, what is the major difference between Accept Payment or Accept Hosted versus Accept Payments versus Accept Customer? Just maybe tie that back into the use cases.
Definitely. So again, like, let me do a screen share, because then I can show you where to get more information later on also if needed. So let me do a quick screen share, and let me open the developer portal. So this is the main page where you should come in, go to the API documentation, and then click on the documentation. So this is pretty much why we created this feature matrix, because most of the questions we were getting was, what's the difference between AcceptJS, AcceptJS with UI, Accept Hosted, Accept Customer. So, and we are trying to help out this as a feature matrix, so that the customer or the merchant can come and compare different features and understand which makes more sense for their use case for this solution. So AcceptJS is a headless JavaScript which you can use with your own hosted form. So the developer creates its own payment form, and within that payment form, you use our AcceptJS to pass in the card details so that your server doesn't store it, but you provide us the card details, so we tokenize it, we store on our site. You get this one-time token which you can then use for doing payments or creating customer profiles or creating a subscription. AcceptJS with UI is a UI wrapper over AcceptJS. So pretty much we have tried to make it much simpler. So in AcceptJS, the most of the work will be done by the developer to build up the UI for the hosted form and then make sure the validations are done correctly, the checkout flow, everything has been integrated correctly. In AcceptJS with UI, we have just tried to simplify that form wherein the hosted form is actually hosted by us, Authorize.net, so the developer doesn't have to build the form, but what it does is once the card details are entered on that hosted form, it again gets back the same token. So it provides a flexibility here that the developer can then choose to either create a subscription out of it or create a customer profile out of it or just do a one-time token with that. It gives that flexibility.
And Anurag, just on the Accept Hosted, so we've actually gotten a couple of questions that maybe you can talk to.
Yeah.
Is there a timeline or something on the roadmap, and I know this is a dangerous question to be asking our product team here, to include PayPal and Apple Pay?
So definitely this is high on our radar right now, including Visa checkout, because we are a Visa company, so we'll definitely make sure all three these digital payments are quickly integrated. I think right now we are looking around September timeframe. Again, don't shoot the messenger here. We have the dev team, we have the product management team along with me here, but what we're trying to make sure is by September, along with this Accept 2.0 platform consolidation which we're doing, we can release some of the features for these digital payments. Definitely we know that Apple Pay, Web, PayPal, and Visa checkout are high on merchant demand, so that once these get integrated, you get the benefit of this with our hosted form. So we'll keep you guys posted. Make sure if you see anything which you want to give the feedback, you can send me in the emails or post it on the forums. We try to make sure we reply it within a day or two. But this is pretty much high on our priority, and we'll make sure this happens in physical here or hopefully end of this year.
Excellent. And what about being able to more fully brand the Accept Hosted page or more fully customize it?
Yeah, so that's pretty much in the roadmap for Accept 2.0, where I was telling more customization. So right now, Accept Hosted does have some customization, but it's not in the same league of our old legacy products, which was SIM. So we have seen merchants giving us feedback where they want more control on the templating, the style sheeting, and the look and feel. So that's again something which is already in progress right now. Hopefully I will provide you more details in coming months once we have something to showcase and provide you a public beta for that. But that will give you the ability that along with the hosted form, the merchants or the developers have the ability to make it more customizable or the look and feel based on their website or storefront.
And Anurag, so one of the concerns that has surfaced a little bit and always comes up with any sort of new technology releases, is there going to be some sort of requirement or sunset of the existing APIs? Will people need to move to using the Accept Suite if they already are using existing APIs?
So if you guys are using our APIs, they are still there. There's no immediate plan for doing any kind of end of life. We will start, we do have a page on our developer where we at least start updating if they are doing any kind of deprecation. So if you go to the upgrade guide here, you can see the API methods which are getting deprecated. So again, we know that merchants need time to move this, and there's a cost included for moving this integration to the new one. There's an added benefit, but we try to balance both in a way that we don't have any effect on your business or payment processing. So we'll make sure that we do like our initial announcement, get the feedback from you guys before we move anything which impacts you guys as a business. But definitely we want, if you're doing a new integration or you're starting out or you are actually anyways planning of doing an upgrade to your systems, we'll recommend using the latest and the greatest which is on our platform, other than going anything which is deprecated already on this site.
That's fantastic, Anurag. So we're up against the bottom of the hour here. So unfortunately, we will have to cut our question and answer session a little bit short. I did want to just say one last time that, thank you so much for being a part of our webinar today, for submitting these fantastic questions. I hope we were able to answer as many of them as possible. In addition to that, please go ahead and check out developer.authorize.net. We also have a series of links that we will be sending out for various resources, from the Developer Getting Started guide all the way to that sample application. So once again, thank you so very much, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
USA Today is